You can wait outside, Miss Hayes. We're at absolute capacity. Those words echoed in the lobby of the Golden Helix Gala, the biggest annual recognition night at Ethel Analytics. In that moment, I, Alana Hayes, felt like everything in that chandelier lit room paused to watch. Eyes from tuxedo clad senior executives and champagne sipping junior traders were all fixed on me. I was the senior data architect at Ethel Analytics, a leading fintech company in Silicon Valley. I was the real brain behind the high frequency, algorithmic trading system that had helped this company capture market share and earn colossal profits for the past 5 years. I was the one who could see patterns in market chaos, the one who could find a potential $100 million hidden in a single line of code. I didn't grow up with Silicon Valley privilege. My father was a local electronics repairman in a small town who believed every problem could be solved with logic and patience. My mother, a math teacher, instilled in me the fierce belief that merit and hard work would always lead to success. That was the only reason I'd survived in this environment so long. I believed in meritocracy. I scanned the room. Every colleague in the engineering division was comfortably seated at the ornate tables. Even Caspian, a new investor who likely only knew code from movies, had a seat. But not me. Blocking my entrance, with a razor-sharp smile, was none other than Chelsea Vance. She wore a shimmering sapphire gown, looking like the perfect symbol of this party's expensive, hollow glamour. "Such a shame, Alana," Chelsea said, her tone dripping with barely concealed triumph. She adjusted the crystal award trophy on the main table. "The gala is strictly for visionaries. You know, not just people who bury their heads in keyboards all night." I understood the humiliation. Chelsea was the one slated to receive the Innovation Excellence Award tonight for the trading system algorithm I had created 6 months ago, which she simply rebranded. I tightened my grip on the clutch I was carrying, which held the most crucial USB drive of my life. I met Chelsea's eyes. My composure seemed to briefly throw her off balance. "Oh, I understand," I replied, my voice perfectly level. "I see Ethel always struggles to find room for both talent and morality simultaneously. Now I know their priorities." My words were soft but cut like glass. I turned to look for Victor Sterling, the Chief Technology Officer, CTO. Victor, a man who was better at playing politics and building a personal brand than any engineer I'd ever met. He was near the stage, exchanging pleasantries with Marcus Thane, Ethel's CEO. Victor quickly approached me, his face showing clear annoyance at my making a scene. He hated me, because my very existence was proof of his technical incompetence. "Miss Hayes," Victor interjected, his voice cold and authoritarian. "This is a leadership recognition event. Show some respect and take your personal issues outside." "I understand, Mr. Sterling," I said. In that instant, all the accumulated slights, the stolen ideas, the ignored promotions, the 3 years of unacknowledged labor coalesced into a single decision. I opened my laptop. "I won't be wasting any more of my time here," I continued, emphasizing each word clearly. "But before I leave, I suggest you all check your personal email, especially those on my invite list." I snapped my laptop shut. The sound was loud enough to be heard nearby. Then I turned my back. Just as I walked a few steps, a chorus of email notification chimes rang out simultaneously from the pockets of Marcus Thane, Victor, Chelsea, and a dozen other top executives. That sound, shattering the gala's pretense of tranquility, was the triumphant soundtrack I had waited for. I walked out of the hall, closing the heavy glass doors behind me, leaving the sudden chaos in my wake. In that moment, outrage was replaced by a sense of absolute control. I knew exactly what I had just sent was about to shake Ethel Analytics to its very core. I know, one click wasn't magic. It was the result of 3 years of work, being betrayed, and a plan coded step by step. To understand why Marcus Thane, Ethel's CEO, was panicking over a single email, I need to show you what they were really taking from me. I know one click wasn't magic. It was the result of 3 years of work, betrayal, and a plan coded step by step. To understand why Marcus Thane, Ethel's CEO, was panicking over a single email, I need to show you what they were really taking from me. When I first joined Ethel Analytics, I believed I had found an engineer's paradise, a place where data spoke the truth, where innovation and efficiency were valued above any personal connection. The first year was exactly as I had hoped. I built a market risk tracking system that reduced trading errors by 30%. I developed predictive models that outperformed every tool Ethel owned. Each time I submitted my results through the proper corporate channels, I believed a new door would open. But the real trouble began when Victor Sterling arrived. He was hired as CTO, coming with a glittering reputation for turning around struggling divisions. What nobody told you was his method: taking credit for his team's deliverables, polishing them with buzzwords, and using them to secure his position. Victor was the new face of fintech, handsome, charismatic, and completely useless in front of a blank spreadsheet. The first time it happened, I tried to convince myself it was a misunderstanding. I had developed a new pair trading algorithm, an innovation I believed would be a core pillar of the company's growth. I presented it to Victor in a private meeting. 2 weeks later, I watched him showcase it to executive leadership, calling it the CTO's vision for the future market, with no mention of my contribution. "The conceptual framework was mine," he said afterward when I naively asked. "You simply helped with some numbers." I was stunned. The entire framework, from conception to execution, was mine. But as a new employee eager to prove I was a team player, I let it go. That was my first mistake. In Silicon Valley, your silence is consent for your exploitation. Over the next few months, a pattern repeated itself. I would identify a complex problem, develop a brilliant solution, share it with Victor through the proper chain of command, and then simply watch him present it as evidence of his superior technical leadership. When I finally gathered the courage to address this with Eliana in Human Resources, her response was icy cold. "Do you have documentation that these ideas were exclusively yours?" she asked without looking up from her screen. "I have the original files with creation dates," I replied. "But you developed them during work hours, using company resources, correct? Then they belong to the company, not to you personally. Victor is your supervisor. If he presents departmental achievements to leadership, that's the appropriate chain of command." I left her office with a painful truth. Ideas flowed up. Credit rarely flowed down. Things got worse as Victor used his political network to isolate me. He realized I was an uncontrollable threat. He excluded me from critical strategy meetings, reducing my role to pure data analysis. Yet strangely, he demanded my most crucial analysis reports right before those meetings took place. He needed my data, but not my presence or my input. That was a sophisticated form of isolation, pushing me out of the circle of influence while keeping me as an endless data source. The emails I sent, containing the most profound market insights, often went unanswered. I only knew they were used when I saw Victor presenting those findings to the executive board, with my name absent from the attendee list. His political network and micromanagement created an invisible wall, blocking every path to advancement. The climax came 6 months ago. I discovered a flaw in Ethal's current risk management system, a weakness that could cause catastrophic damage during volatile market shifts. I spent months developing a new technical logistics framework, a completely automated trading algorithm that could mitigate risk to near zero. But when I took the documentation to the strategy meeting, Victor blocked me at the door. "The agenda is very tight today, Alana. We need to streamline. Just give me your materials. I'll synthesize the key points into my overview." I reluctantly handed over the documentation, and for 3 hours, I sat there watching Victor rush through a 2-minute summary that missed all the crucial innovations. My initiative was shelved. 2 weeks later, Chelsea Vance, who had deep ties to the board, joined our team. 3 weeks after that, she presented her new technical logistics framework to the executive team. My work, simply rebranded. Her initiative was immediately greenlit. Chelsea was promoted to project director and became a rising star. When I confronted Victor, his answer was brutally concise. "Chelsea's approach aligned with senior leadership's priorities that your version lacked. This is business, Alana. Who gets the credit matters more than who came up with the idea first." That night, I sat surrounded by 3 years of my work. innovations that had generated millions for the company, while my salary and career stagnated. I was wrong to believe in merit. If results matter more than people, I decided, I would show them exactly what that philosophy would cost them. If results matter more than people, I decided I would show them exactly what that philosophy would cost them. That night, after Victor dismissed me with the cruelty of pure business logic, I made a cold calculation. I would not leave in silence, handing over my intellectual assets to the thieves. I would turn my outrage into an art form, a revenge plan designed with the precision of a high-frequency trading algorithm. I started Project Vi. V was not for Victor. V was for Vantage, meaning advantage. Vantage Core was the name I gave the new trading algorithm, the ultimate upgraded version of everything Ethal had ever stolen from me. I swore that no single byte of its code would ever touch a company's server or device. I worked evenings, weekends, and even at 4 in the morning, using my personal laptop and a strictly secured VPN connection. I leveraged my painful lessons. My algorithm now not only predicted risk, but could also automatically optimize trade execution in real time, a capability no other fintech company was close to achieving. I knew Ethel would never be able to create this because to do so, they needed me, the person they had just discarded. But Vantage Core was only one part of the plan. To ensure Ethel's inevitable collapse, I needed to create a strategic flaw in what they already owned. 7 months prior, when I developed the pair trading algorithm that Victor stole, I had anticipated that he would never understand its complexity. The algorithm was highly sensitive to massive market updates. To keep it stable under all conditions, I had created a tiny module, a critical stability patch, and installed it deep within the system without fully reporting the details. This patch did not change day-to-day trading results, but it guaranteed the algorithm wouldn't suffer performance degradation during abnormal market conditions. I had created it out of professionalism, but now it has become a weapon. The very night I was humiliated, I secretly accessed Ethel's server using a legacy account with limited privileges, an access point I knew Victor had forgotten to revoke. I did not sabotage the system. I performed a simple action. I removed the critical stability patch. The system would continue to function normally and be stable under average market conditions. But when a black swan event occurred, a major market shift, the algorithm would begin to misfire, causing severe, repeated financial damage. And nobody at Ethel besides me knew exactly where that patch was or how it operated. This was not vandalism. This was me simply withdrawing something I had given them, something they did not know they needed. Meanwhile, I began building my team. I was not looking for political players. I was looking for marginalized geniuses like me. First was Marcus, a senior quant who had left Ethel after his derivative trading idea was claimed by another director. Second was Lena, a talented security engineer whom the company repeatedly denied promotion because she was too blunt in her risk reports. I spent my off hours having coffee, exchanging stories with former employees, people who had been used and underrated by Ethel. I was not just building a company, I was building a coalition of the betrayed, a group that shared a deep belief in merit. I knew that if we left together, Ethel would lose not just its algorithms, but its entire technical backbone. They think they're firing me from their table, I told Marcus in a secret meeting at a rundown cafe on the outskirts of the city. But they are handing me the opportunity to clear the room. Marcus smiled. Then, Alana, let's make sure they pay for the cleaning services. The plan went beyond coding. It became a strategic chess game, gathering undeniable legal evidence, securing my intellectual property, and waiting for the most perfect moment to trigger the chaos. And that moment, I knew, was the night of the Golden Helix Gala. Project Vantage Core was growing beyond my wildest dreams, but a brilliant algorithm, no matter how many millions it could generate, was just a product without solid legal protection. I knew Victor and Marcus were not just credit thieves, they were seasoned manipulators, ready to use every legal and political tool to crush any perceived rival. If I was going to walk away, I needed an impenetrable shield. I spent the next 3 months setting up my defense perimeter. First was intellectual property protection. I hired a specialist fintech law firm operating under a shell company name, to file for a patent on the high-frequency Vantage Core algorithm. The process was painstaking. The lawyers had to ensure that every line of code, every conceptual framework, was documented as being developed on my personal equipment during off hours and using zero Ethal resources. The most important thing, they had to prove it was technically distinct from the older algorithm Ethel was currently using. Once the preliminary patent was granted, I had my first legal shield. Victor could accuse me of contract violation, but he wouldn't be able to touch the core intellectual property. The next step was client acquisition. I couldn't approach them publicly. Instead, I leveraged my long-standing network, seeking out senior executives at major investment funds who I knew had expressed frustration with Ethal's sluggishness and outdated systems. I held discreet meetings at low-profile restaurants presenting the Vantage Core solution as an independent feasibility study. I didn't ask them to sign a contract. I only needed an agreement in principle, a commitment that they would transition once my company officially launched. I succeeded with 3 major clients' assets, ready to pull billions of dollars in trading funds from Ethel. But my ultimate weapon wasn't code or clients. It was information. In the course of gathering evidence, I had reached out to Leo, a former senior compliance officer, who was suspiciously terminated after questioning some internal financial reporting. Leo wouldn't speak directly, but he hinted that something unethical was happening between Marcus Thane and Victor Sterling, involving insider trading risks that bordered on market manipulation. To get concrete proof, I needed a breakthrough. I reached out to Iris, a former board member who had retired due to health concerns, a quiet voice that Marcus and Victor had successfully marginalized in critical decisions. I met Iris at an outdoor restaurant in Sausalito, where the fresh air might ease the tension of betrayal. I didn't tell her about my resignation or the new company. I only spoke about my concern for system stability and recent high-risk trading decisions. "You're not the only one concerned, Alana," Iris said, her voice dropping. Victor always implied that risk control was an expensive luxury. I overheard a call between Marcus and Victor just before I retired. They were looking for ways to bend the rules on some reporting to maximize the quarterly returns. That's when I made my move. I had prepared a tiny recording device disguised as a personal financial analysis tool. I smoothly steered the conversation toward a recent stock trade Ethel had executed, one that I knew was highly irregular. "The success of that trade was incredible, wasn't it?" I asked innocently. Iris looked at me, her eyes flickering with disappointment. "Success? It was them who risked more money than they should have. Marcus called it visionary investment. I called it illegal deliberate exposure." She described exactly what she had overheard, how Victor and Marcus used the trading algorithm to hide risky maneuvers, and how they deliberately ignored compliance warnings. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes, but I had what I needed: indirect testimony and details of potential market manipulation by the CEO and CTO. I left the meeting with Iris feeling like I was carrying a heavy explosive device. This recording file wasn't intended for the regulators. Its purpose was far greater. It was to paralyze Ethel's defense right at the moment of my departure. When Marcus and Victor had to worry about an internal investigation into financial fraud, they would have no time or resources left to sue a former employee over a contract violation. Everything was ready. 8 key employees had agreed to resign with me. The patent was secured. The clients were waiting, and I had the recording file. Only one last step remained: choosing the moment to activate the chaos. And the night of the Golden Helix Gala, the night they celebrated their hypocrisy, was the perfect time. I drove away from the lobby, closing the heavy glass doors behind me, without looking back at the chaos I had triggered. That was the feeling of absolute freedom. But I knew that chaotic moment was only the opening act. I calmly walked out of the building and toward my car. The laptop sitting hot beside me held the foundation of a collapsed empire. I had pressed send the instant Chelsea's and Victor's insults reached my ears. That email was no ordinary resignation letter. It was a declaration of war sent to 12 of Ethel's top executives, including Marcus Thane and Victor Sterling. The subject line was simple and unavoidable: notice of contract termination, intellectual property filing, and startup press release. The email content was carefully structured, devoid of emotion, focusing only on legal and financial facts. I began with a cold declaration that I, along with 7 other key colleagues, the real brains behind Ethal's pair trading derivatives and risk modeling systems, were terminating our employment immediately. I listed each person's name, title, and the critical contributions they had been responsible for over the past 3 years. I made it clear that this was a mass talent exodus happening all at once. The second part was the new company announcement. I formally informed them of the launch of VantageCore, a high-frequency trading fintech firm. I stressed that VantageCore would operate on an entirely new, algorithmic framework developed on my personal time and resources. Attached was the first crucial file, the preliminary patent filing for the VantageCore algorithm. I used legal language to explicitly warn Ethal that any attempt to copy or recreate this technology would result in an immediate countersuit backed by proof that my new algorithm used none of their legacy intellectual property. This file immediately invalidated Victor's attempts to threaten me with contract violation lawsuits. The second crucial file was the client transition advisory. This formal notification to Ethal's legal department specified 3 major clients I had worked with who were in the process of transferring their assets. I stressed that this was completely legal based on performance clauses written into the client contracts, clauses that Ethel had repeatedly failed to meet due to the old system's stagnation. But the ultimate weapon, the file that made Marcus Thane sweat during the gala, lay in the third attachment, the undeniable recording file. I titled the file Internal Compliance Risk Analysis. That was the 10-minute audio recording of my conversation with former board member Iris, in which she described exactly how Marcus and Victor had used the algorithm to hide risky trades and deliberately violate financial reporting rules. The recording was not a smoking gun for regulators, but it was enough to trigger an immediate internal investigation and draw the unwanted attention of compliance bodies. The recording's purpose was not to put them in jail. It was to paralyze them. When Victor and Marcus received that email, their first reaction wouldn't be to sue me, but to race to contain this potential financial scandal. As I got into my car, I could feel the hurricane sweeping through the lobby. My phone began vibrating nonstop with incoming calls and texts. The CEO, CFO, head of HR. I had silenced the phone but kept the screen active to monitor. I saw Marcus Thane's number flash 7 times in a row. I smiled. Their panic was music to my ears. I drove out of the parking garage, looking in the rearview mirror as the heavy glass doors of the gala receded into the night. I knew at that very moment Ethal Analytics was experiencing a terrifying, unrecoverable reckoning. The men who had banned me from their table were now fighting each other to figure out why that table was suddenly shaking so violently. I had built this revenge not just with code, but with patience, and it was a masterpiece. Just as I drove away from Ethal's parking lot, the phone calls became relentless. I knew Marcus Thane and Victor Sterling wouldn't just sit there. Victor was a political genius. He may not have been able to write a clean line of code, but he knew how to manipulate power and the law. His first reaction would not be begging. It would be counterattack. Sure enough, less than 2 hours later, while I was meeting my new VantageCore team at our temporary office, a flood of legal emails poured into my personal inbox. It was an avalanche of threats. Ethal's legal team had filed an emergency preliminary injunction accusing me and the 7 other colleagues of violating non-compete agreements, intellectual property theft, and, more dangerously, corporate data security breaches. Victor played a highly cynical card. He used the fact that I had uploaded the critical stability patch to the company server months ago to fabricate the claim that I had used unauthorized tools to access the system. He didn't need to prove what I did. He only needed to create enough doubt to paralyze us. As expected, within hours, financial news sites began publishing vicious articles. They didn't mention my public humiliation or the talent exodus. Instead, they focused on Ethal's accusations, painting me as a disgruntled former employee who was fired for dishonest behavior and attempting to attack the system of her previous employer. Victor was using his media network to run a smear campaign. The biggest challenge wasn't the bad press. It was money. The next day, the bank informed us that Vantage Corp's newly established business account had been temporarily frozen, citing Ethel's legal claims and suspicion of fund origins related to the IP dispute. Victor knew that a fintech startup couldn't survive without liquidity. It was a crippling blow. If I didn't act fast, Vantage Corp would collapse before we could officially launch. Fortunately, I had anticipated this. I had prepared a small legal defense fund. I immediately contacted my lawyer. We need to respond not just with law, but with transparency, I told my lawyer. First, we used the already approved patent filing to refute the IP theft charges. We issued a concise but sharp statement asserting that Vantage Corp owned patented, independently developed technology and challenged Ethal to publicly demonstrate any violation. Second, to address the bank account freeze, I leveraged my network to contact a board member of the bank directly. I didn't talk about Ethel's internal disputes. I only talked about the recording file and what it implied about Marcus Thane's questionable compliance track record. A single touch on Ethel's biggest vulnerability was enough. The bank, fearful of being drawn into a scandal involving potential financial fraud, quickly eased the account freeze. We regained access to our funds, but the delay had created a hole in our launch timeline. However, Victor's attack brought an unexpected benefit. The clients I had secured preliminary agreements with began reaching out. They didn't believe the rumors. They were seasoned traders who knew Ethel's stagnation firsthand. Victor's public over-the-top reaction proved to them that Ethel was terrified and Vantage Corp had something worth fighting for. They tried to bury us, Alana, Marcus said, but they only dug themselves deeper into their own desperation. I smiled cynically. Victor is great at PR, but he forgets that in fintech, data is the ultimate truth, and his data is about to betray him. While Victor was busy with legal injunctions, he forgot that the real threat wasn't the courtroom, it was the market. 2 weeks after the email, Victor's legal campaign began to falter. Thanks to my lawyers and the secured patent, Ethel's emergency injunctions failed to deliver the intended knockout punch. The situation settled into an eerie calm before the big storm. Meanwhile, Vantage Corp was quietly building. We secured our official office lease, and my team, the 8 marginalized geniuses, worked with a drive I had never seen before. They weren't just coding, they were building their own house. Late one evening, while I was reviewing a derivatives pricing model with Marcus, my private line rang. It was a private number from New York Ethel's headquarters. I looked at Marcus, and he nodded, urging me to answer. Alana Hayes speaking, I said, my voice calm. Miss Hayes, it's Marcus Thane. I instantly recognized the CEO's voice. It was stressed and tired, completely lacking the arrogance of 3 weeks prior. Hello, Mr. Thane, I replied, emotionless. I'm surprised you're not contacting me through your legal team. We need to move past legalities right now, Alana, he said, his tone surprisingly desperate. We are talking about something much bigger than litigation. We're talking about the stability of the firm. I knew the stability he was talking about wasn't ethical or human, it was financial. He had seen major clients preparing to leave, and he was starting to notice the system glitches in Ethel's trading, the first signs of the missing critical stability patch. So you've read the recording file I sent then? I asked pointedly. A long silence followed. We are reviewing those internal reports, but that's a secondary issue. The primary issue is you, Alana. You are Ethel's greatest asset. Your departure is an irreplaceable loss. I smiled to myself cynically. An hour ago, I wasn't worth a seat at the party. Now I'm the greatest asset? That was a massive misunderstanding, a lapse by Victor and Renata. Marcus rushed to blame his subordinates. We are ready to fix it. I want to meet you immediately. We will offer you anything you want. He proposed a private meeting. I agreed, knowing this was my chance to witness their spiritual collapse. The meeting took place the next day at a neutral hotel in San Francisco. Marcus Thane and Victor Sterling were both present. Victor looked gaunt and visibly stressed. Marcus opened with a perfunctory apology and then went straight to the point. Alana, you are a visionary. Ethel needs you. Name your terms. We will remove Victor immediately if that's what you want. You will take the Chief Technology Officer role, reporting directly to me. We will grant you a substantial share of preferred stock, ensuring you have a voice on the board. Anything you want, you name it. I looked at Victor. He said nothing, his eyes fixed on the table. The man who had stolen my credit, humiliated me, and tried to frame me with legal threats was now waiting for my judgment. This was the pinnacle of the revenge I had waited for. Mr. Thane, I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the room. I once wanted those things. I wanted recognition, respect, and a seat at the table, but you taught me a much more valuable lesson. My value is not defined by what you choose to give me. I pushed their acquisition proposal documents back across the table. 6 months ago, I gave you ideas that could have saved the company. You ignored them. Now you offer me a CTO position and stock. But I have built my own company where I am the CEO and 8 of your best people are working for me. The truth is, even if I accepted, I'd still be working with a system that is rotten from the inside out. Marcus was desperate. Think about the market. You can't compete with us. We have the resources. I smiled, the first genuine smile since the night of the gala. Mr. Thane, you still don't understand. I don't need to compete with you. I am replacing you, and I have one final piece of bad news. I don't need your table. I will build my own. I stood up, refusing the handshake. I had what I wanted, the ultimate power, rejection, a desperate confession from the CEO himself, and confirmation that my plan had succeeded. As I walked out, I left the 2 most powerful men at Ethel sitting there staring at a rejected proposal and realizing they had lost everything due to their own arrogance. I walked away from the meeting with Marcus Thane and Victor Sterling, leaving behind 2 men facing the bitter truth. Their power could no longer buy me. My rejection wasn't the final act of revenge. It was merely the confirmation of a larger event unfolding in the market. Ethel's collapse didn't come from a courtroom or an internal audit. It came from the very place they believed they were invincible, market performance. Immediately after my resignation, Ethel quickly reverted to using the older algorithm. Victor ordered the remaining engineering team to stabilize the system, but he forgot one crucial detail. To stabilize the system, they needed to understand its deep architecture. And the only person who truly understood my critical stability patch was outside the building. For the first few weeks, the market was relatively stable. The system behaved normally, and Marcus and Victor probably reassured themselves that they could manage. They were wrong to think my code was as easily replaceable as me. But Vantage Core was ready to launch. We finalized contracts with the 3 major clients I had pre-secured. Their public transition of billions of dollars in trading assets away from Ethal caused a small but noticeable shockwave. The financial world began asking questions. Reporters started digging into the rumors of a severe talent drain at Ethel. Then the real storm hit. A European central bank unexpectedly intervened in the currency market. This was exactly the kind of black swan event that Ethel's legacy algorithm was not designed to handle without my intervention. As market data began to fluctuate wildly, Ethel's trading system began to misfire. The older algorithm operating without the stability patch couldn't distinguish between normal volatility and high-risk disruption. It began executing trades robotically, lacking the necessary finesse, buying too much when it should have sold, and vice versa. Lena, our security expert, had tracked Ethel's performance via public indices. She called me in the middle of the night. Alana, they are hemorrhaging money. The trades are deviating exponentially from the expected model. Within 48 hours, Ethel's system had caused 2 severe damage episodes for their remaining clients. Unlike minor glitches, this was a repeated system failure occurring when market stability was most critical. The absence of my patch turned market volatility into Ethel's self-destruct sequence. The news spread fast. Just rumors, truth displayed on the streets trading boards. Funds were losing millions due to algorithmic failure. Ethel's largest clients lost hundreds of millions in 2 days. The collapse was not just about code, it was about credibility. Simultaneously, the whispers of potential market manipulation, implied by the recording file I had sent, began to surface in the media. While no formal charges were filed, the combination of system failure and ethical suspicion created a catastrophic loss of confidence. Ethal's stock plummeted uncontrollably. Competitors publicly criticized the firm's risk management capability. Vantage Core, conversely, proved its mettle. When the market shook, our new algorithm ran flawlessly, delivering steady profits to our new clients. We didn't cause the chaos. We simply provided a safe harbor as Ethel burned its own bridges. The chaos forced one final call from Marcus Thane, but this time it wasn't to offer me my job back. "What are you doing, Alana?" he demanded, his voice no longer that of a powerful CEO, but of a desperate man. "Give us the patch. We know you have it." "I made my intentions clear in the resignation email, Mr. Thane," I replied. "I don't sell my talent cheap. Furthermore, men who violate ethical and compliance rules do not deserve a lifeline." I hung up, leaving Marcus with the echo of the failure he had engineered himself. Ethel's remaining engineering team worked around the clock, desperately trying to find the root cause of the instability. But they were looking for a needle in a haystack without a compass. Victor, who was always better at presenting than fixing, could do nothing. He could manipulate people, but he couldn't manipulate the logic of code. Within a month, Ethal Analytics transformed from a market leader into a pariah. Their trading assets had dropped over 40%. This decay left the company utterly vulnerable, opening the door to an inevitable conclusion. I looked at the market screen where Ethel's stock was sinking deeper. I was wrong to trust in merit, but I was right to trust in my code, and my code was delivering justice. 2 months later, Ethel Analytics' demise was complete. The plummeting stock value and the loss of major clients made the company a prime target. One of Ethel's longtime competitors, a massive investment fund, executed a hostile takeover. Marcus Thane was forced out as CEO, and Victor Sterling was quickly terminated. No surprise there. The news of high-risk trades and compliance lapses, fueled by my recording file, created an unacceptable environment for shareholders. Ethel didn't die. It was overthrown and dismantled by the very people who sought to dominate the market. It was a fitting end for an organization that valued politics over merit. While Ethel was dissolving, Vantage Core was soaring. We signed 27 new clients, including some of the biggest names in automated trading. Our high-frequency algorithm was not just stable, but superior, delivering profits that exceeded even my original projections. The 8 marginalized geniuses who left Ethel were now powerful founders. We weren't just making money, we were building a completely new corporate culture where every idea was listened to and every contribution was valued. A year after the Golden Helix Gala night, I received a special invitation to be the keynote speaker at the Global FinTech Conference in New York, the industry's most important event. I accepted. I chose a sleek, understated outfit. As I walked onto the stage, the bright lights illuminated the auditorium. I looked out at the audience, where I recognized many familiar faces, executives, traders, and some former Ethel employees. And I saw Chelsea Vance. She was in the third row, no longer arrogant, just intensely focused. I approached the podium and adjusted the microphone. I began my speech with the very words that had once been used to exclude me. "You can wait outside." A murmur rippled through the audience. "Those words changed my life," I continued, my voice echoing across the hall. "Not because they hurt, though they did, but because they showed me the naked truth. That I was waiting for recognition from people who were never going to give it. That I was measuring my worth by their standards instead of my own." I shared my journey from an overlooked analyst to an industry innovator. I didn't name Ethel, Victor, or Marcus. I didn't need to. The story was no longer about them. It was about the power of knowing your own value. I looked directly at the audience, my gaze resting for a moment on Chelsea's face. They told me I wasn't worthy of a seat at their table. They told me I was too risky. Then they offered me anything I wanted to come back. I paused, creating a moment of absolute silence. I refused it all, because I realized one fundamental truth. The most powerful seat isn't the one others save for you. The most powerful seat is the one you build for yourself. The applause was deafening. It wasn't just for Vantage Core's success. It was for the perfect execution of revenge. As I walked off the stage, a man approached me. It was Vincent, the former VP from Ethel, who had chased me to the parking lot. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice laced with genuine respect. I just wanted to say you were right. We couldn't do it, but you did. You proved them all wrong. I simply nodded. His acknowledgement no longer mattered. The respect I earned wasn't something they could grant or take away. It was something I had seized. As I stood there looking at the executives who had once humiliated me, now lining up to offer their business cards, I knew that the sweetest revenge wasn't seeing your enemies fail, but building a successful empire out of the ashes of that failure. I hadn't just saved my career, I had created a place where people like me would never have to experience that kind of betrayal again. I looked out at the audience and delivered my final thoughts. I have concluded my story on the industry's biggest stage, but now I want to hear your story. What was the moment in this journey from being locked out to Marcus Thane begging that resonated with you the most? What was the moment you wanted to take action yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories are my greatest inspiration. If this story about turning injustice into power has inspired you, don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss any more stories of justice served in the most unexpected ways. Thank you for listening.